Welcome everybody, Shiur number 620. We're learning Lina Nishmas Blima Bas Reb Moshe, and that's Yitzchak Yosef B'Miri Molka Shefayla B'Machzilas Shuva. Okay, getting back to our malacha of KOSHAIR tying. So we ended off last year talking about that the main part of kosher, the main categories of kosher are broken up into two. In other words, it's brought down in the Rishonim, the Gemara, the Rishonim, and so on, that there are two different types of knots that we are worried about and that are going into the malacha of kosher that we used in the Mishkan and so on. Now, it's a machlokes amongst the Rishonim, which one takes precedence, and then we're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch how the Mechaber, the Ramah, how they bring it down l'maisa that we have to be choshed for both, both sides. Those Rishonim who hold that we're choshed for one, and the other ones who hold for choshed for two. Okay, so let's start explaining what are the two different types of knots that we're talking about that are brought down in the Rishonim. The first one is called a KOSHAIR Uman. KOSHAIR Uman meaning plain and simple, a craftsman's knot, a professional type of a knot. The other type of knot that's brought down in the Rishonim is called a KOSHAIR Shel Kayama, a long-term knot, a permanent knot. Now, of course, we're going to discuss both of them and explain what they're all about and see how they come into play, and of course getting down into our practical applications, and we'll see how our knots of today fall into these categories. Of course, tying shoes, laces, all these various different type of things, twist ties, how we work with them and how it's going to work. Okay, so we first we want to explain the KOSHAIR Uman, the craftsman's knot, and then the upcoming Shiur Bezras Hashem, we're going to get into the KOSHAIR Shel Kayama. Now, we're going to see in conjunction with both of these, with the KOSHAIR Shel Uman, the craftsman's knot, and the KOSHAIR Shel Kayama, the long-term permanent knot, we're going to see sometimes there's a knot that's made that'll be Asr Min HaTorah. Sometimes there'll be a knot made that'll be Asr Min Rabbanan, and sometimes there'll be a knot made that it's mutter altogether. Okay, so let's begin. So first we're going to want to talk about the KOSHAIR Uman, the craftsman's knot, and to what does that pertain to, and what is a craftsman's knot when we say the word craftsman's knot. So the Sefer Lam, the Mishnah Berurah brings it down, some examples. We're going to bring down a few different examples, but just real quickly to go through and explain it a little bit better, brings down the Sefer Lam Test Malachas on page 785 like this, that a KOSHAIR Uman, the KOSHAIR, the craftsman's knot refers to make it plain and simple, refers to any skillful executed knot that is very firm and is therefore capable of remaining permanently tight. Now, he goes further and he says, the reason why it's called a KOSHAIR Uman, so why is it called a craftsman's knot, a professional knot? I mean, I could also make a simple knot that's going to last a long time. And that's the other type of knot which we're going to be talking about, KOSHAIR Shel Kayama. So where is the distinction? So he explains further that it is referred to a craftsman's knot, a KOSHAIR Uman, because some degree of skill and sophistication is usually required in making this knot. Whereby, on the other hand, which we're going to be using a lot, we're going to see a knot that does not have these qualities, whatever those qualities are, we'll see in a minute, is referred to a KOSHAIR Hedyot, a unskilled knot, a simple knot. And that's what we're going to see when we talk about a KOSHAIR Hedyot, a unskilled knot. That's what we're going to see when the other category of KOSHAIR Shel Kayama, a long-term knot, even though it might be KOSHAIR Hedyot, the unskilled knot, will be coming into play. But again, we will explain how that works also, of course, so nobody should get nervous. It sounds a little bit complicated, all these various different types of knot, KOSHAIR Uman, KOSHAIR Shel Kayama, a Hedyot, a craftsman, what. Okay, we're going to explain one case at a time, one category at a time. Now, just real quickly to start with a couple of examples. He brings down the Sefer Lam Tes Malachas from the Mishnah and Shabbos, straight up, that cites two specific examples that Ataka brought down in the Mishnah. The first one is a camel driver's knot, which is what? What do we mean by a camel driver's knot? Just to explain, in other words, that is an example of a KOSHAIR Uman, a craftsman's knot. The spectrum of the septum of the camel's nose was pierced. They made a hole, and a narrow strip of leather was inserted through the hole. Now, a tight knot was made to connect the end and form a permanent ring. The knot completed this ring, and the knot was at the end of the ring, right? And this was called a KOSHAIR shel uman, a craftsman's knot. Ropes or reins would be fastened in the ring, of course, as needed to pull the camel and to tie the camel and so on. Okay. Just one more quick example. He brings out also from the Mishnah, a simple sailor's knot, the prow of a boat, which is like a little ring at the end of the boat, the metal ring at the end of a boat. Sometimes you see it on the people go rowing, they'll see it at the end of the boat. But this had a hole, and through which the length of a rope was inserted and tied tightly at both ends to form a permanent ring. Of course, the knot was formed at the end of the ring. This knot was called a KOSHAIR uman, the professional knot, and the long ropes would be fastened to the ring to keep the boat in place when it was docked. And this is how they use the boats, a smaller boat, a larger boat, but this little ring with the knot at the end was fastened over there in the boat, and the end knot is what we call the Mishnah brings down just an example of a KOSHAIR uman, a craftsman's knot. Now, to make a long story short, these are just two examples of what we meant by the Mishnah brought down as a real professional knot. Now, nowadays, the problem is a lot of times these things are not in use. And the problem is we don't really know exactly how they were made, or if they are still in use, it's not made the same way that it was done specifically in the Mishnah, whereby we could understand exactly what a KOSHAIR uman, what a craftsman's knot is all about. Therefore, it's somewhat of a machlokes, a dispute amongst the poskim as to what exactly is truly qualifies as a craftsman's knot, whereby it will be a problem to make on Shabbos. So to make a long story short, Lamaisa, the poskim conclude the poskim bring down. We'll see in a minute in the Ramon, the Shulchan Aruch, that however in practice, bottom line is any tight knot can be considered a KOSHAIR uman, a craftsman's knot, whereby it will be also to make on Shabbos. So now, how far does this go that today we don't know exactly what is a KOSHAIR uman, what exactly is a craftsman's knot, and where do we draw the line per se? Tells us the Ramon, the Shulchan Aruch, and just to mention real quickly, our siman that we'll be working with is with KOSHAIR and Mater, with tying and untying, is in siman Shin Yud Zayin. Siman Shin Yud Zayin in HILCHOS SHABBOS is the siman that talks all about the various different types of knots, how to work with knots on Shabbos, and it tells us the Ramah, the end of Sif Aleph, that v'yesh oimrim the yesh lizor shaloi lahater. There are those who say, Lamaisa, we'll see in a minute how we paskin, the yesh lizor shaloi lahater, one should not open shum KOSHAIR, one should not open, or tie for that matter, but now we're talking about the opening part, which we see that tying and untying, KOSHAIR and Mater really go together, but we'll try and talk it out as separate malachas, but tells us the Ramah again in the Shulchan Aruch at the end of Sif Aleph, yesh oimrim the yesh lizor shaloi lahater, shum KOSHAIR any nachu shnei ksharim zelza. When a double knot, one should be careful not to open or not to tie, for that in the matter, a double knot on Shabbos. We'll see in the Mishabura Bezbuz Hashem, he explains, but tells us the Ramah further, why? Why can I tie or untie a double knot? What's the problem? What am I doing wrong by doing that? The Ein Anu tells us the Ramah, the Ein Anu Bekiyam Eza Mikrei KOSHAIR shel uman. We don't know. Nowadays, we don't know what exactly is called the KOSHAIR uman, what exactly is called the craftsman's knot. Dafilu b'she'enai shel kayama, which is our other category, which we're going to be talking about, even if it's not considered a kayama. In other words, it's only going to last for a couple of hours. Now, again, what kayama is, we have to discuss as a whole discussion in itself. But it's going to last a couple of hours. But a double knot, one has to be careful. This is just an example we're giving, but we have to get more into it. But one example the Ramah brings, double knot, be careful not to open, not to close, is also l'kashrei v'huadin lahatira. One cannot tie a double knot, and one cannot open a double knot. And v'chein noihagim, and this is our minig, this is what we should do, tells us the Ramah. Now, how that works in conjunction with shoes, we're going to have to see. Sometimes there's a bow on top. There's a lot to talk about. But first, let's just get the category straight and an understanding as to what it's all about. Mikol Makim tells us to Ramah, real quickly, we'll end off with this, that we should be aware, Mikol Makim Nirad, if Makim Tzara, in the Makim Tzar, if somebody has Tzar and they're under distress, Ein Lochash Umoter lahatira. One would be allowed to open a double knot. For example, they have a double knot on their shoe, in a case where it wasn't kayama, which also we have to talk about, but a regular double knot on their shoe, and somebody's b'makam sar, they have to take off their shoes, it's uncomfortable, and so on. So makam sar in lachush umutalati, where one would be allowed to open the double knot. The einay ela isad rabbanan, because of the fact that a double knot is aser midrabanan, it's aser midrabanan of makam sar loy gazru, and in a case of discomfort, they were not geyser, and one would be allowed to open the double knot. Okay, we're going to stop here. Of course, we're going to get more into it next year. Bezrat Hashem, thank you for listening. Aslach and bracha, kol tov.